What a wild way to start the season for the Baltimore Ravens. A game that had everything. Highlights, explosive plays, big-time performances, but none of it seemed to matter when the final whistle blew. Because in the end, all people are talking about is the collapse, the meltdown, and of course, the bizarre post-game drama that absolutely no one saw coming, featuring Bills cornerback Christian Benford randomly calling out DeAndre Hopkins. Like for what? Look, the Ravens had some genuinely bright moments in this loss to Buffalo. Lamar Jackson looked sharp. The run game was cooking early. DeAndre Hopkins, playing limited snaps, still came up with a ridiculous one-handed touchdown grab that had people jumping out of their seats. And yeah, the Ravens put 40 points on the board. That's usually more than enough to walk out with a win. But in this case, it just wasn't. And yet somehow, after all that, Christian Benford made sure we had something extra to talk about. The man was the victim of an unreal catch. Hopkins just mossed him, one-handed, in the end zone, toe tap, all of it. And instead of just tipping his cap, he decides to go with this cold, straight-faced quote. Asterisk, tell him to do it again if we play him again. Asterisk, that was his response. Then he was asked if there was a push-off. Same thing. Asterisk, tell him to do it again. Asterisk, stone cold. No smile. No hint of sarcasm. Just a guy who looked like he took that catch way too personally. Now, I don't know what kind of beef there is between Benford and Hopkins, if any, but that felt out of left field. Hopkins didn't say a word about Benford. He just did what he's done his entire career, made an incredible play. And then in his post-game presser, DeAndre was respectful, gave Buffalo their props, said his team still had work to do. It was veteran talk from a guy who's been around, who's seen it all. And yet Benford decided to create bulletin board material in week 1. It's the kind of comment that's going to sit in Hopkins' head. And if these two teams meet again, and with the talent on both rosters, they might. Don't be shocked if he goes right back at Benford. Because here's the thing. Hopkins wasn't even out there for most of the game. He only played 18 snaps. That's about 35% of the offensive plays. And still, in those limited opportunities, he made one of the best plays of the entire game. He wasn't brought in to be the number 1 wide receiver. That's Zay Flowers' role now. Hopkins is there to be the veteran assassin, the clutch guy who shows up in big moments and snatches souls. And that's exactly what he did. That grab was vintage Nook. It wasn't about volume. It was about impact. And you better believe if the Ravens need another big-time play late in the season, he's going to be ready. But let's talk about Lamar Jackson for a second, because he was dialed in. The numbers? Solid. 14 of 19 passing. 209 yards. 2 touchdowns. No interceptions. Not flashy, but clean. Efficient. Vintage Lamar. And like we've seen over the years, Lamar doesn't need to throw for 400 yards to win. He's not a stat chaser. He's a game winner. He's the kind of quarterback where if you only look at the box score, you'll miss the story. Because what he did on the field was command this offense, move the chains, and make Buffalo sweat. And that throw to Hopkins? Perfection. Dropped it in a bucket, right where only DeAndre could get it. That's the chemistry they've been building all offseason, and it's already paying off. Now, what stood out as a little odd was how Lamar distributed the ball. Zay Flowers was clearly the favorite target. Asterisk asterisk 9 asterisk asterisk looks his way. Bateman got 4. But after that, it was scraps. Hopkins had 2 targets. Mark Andrews? Just 1. That's not the norm. We're used to Lamar spreading it around a lot more evenly, especially when Andrews is healthy. So yeah, it might have just been a game flow thing. Maybe it was the game plan. But it was a bit uncharacteristic. Still, you drop 40 points, you expect to win, right? The issue wasn't offense. The issue was the collapse. The Ravens were up 2 scores. They were dominating the game, running the ball effectively, controlling the tempo. And then, boom, Buffalo goes off. Josh Allen wakes up and starts carving up the defense. The Ravens suddenly look flat, passive. And just like that, the game slips away. And that's where people are pointing fingers at the coaching staff, particularly John Harbaugh. Because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. In fact, it's been a pattern. Since 2008, Harbaugh's Ravens have blown 17 double-digit leads in the second half, the most by any head coach since at least 1991. That's not just bad luck. That's a trend. And it's one that Ravens fans are sick and tired of seeing. Harbaugh's response? Well, that's where things got weird. He was asked about the late-game collapses and gave this puzzling answer, something like, Maybe it's because we've had so many leads. We've just been ahead a lot. So yeah, we've lost some of those games. I mean, what? That's not what fans want to hear. Not after watching the team unravel in real time. Not after hearing all offseason that this year would be different. Not after you bring in new coordinators, make big signings, talk about changing the culture, and then go out and do this in week 1. It's not just about this loss. It's about all the ones that came before it. It's about the fact that every time this team seems to turn a corner, they find a way to fall apart at the worst possible moment. And that's why there's so much frustration boiling over right now. And make no mistake, this wasn't on Lamar. This wasn't on the offense. Lamar played a clean, efficient game. Derrick Henry went off. Zay Flowers had a career high in yards. DeAndre Hopkins delivered in the clutch. They did their job. They put up enough points to win. You put 40 on the board, that should be game over. But once again, the defense collapsed. And once again, the coaching decisions down the stretch, whether it was conservative play calling, strange clock management, or questionable substitutions, left fans scratching their heads. And when your head coach steps up to the podium and acts like it's just part of the process, that doesn't fly. Not when you're in a Super Bowl or bust season. Not when you've got a quarterback like Lamar Jackson in his prime and a roster built to win now. So yeah, there were positives. But you don't get points for almost. You don't hang banners for close calls. This game will be remembered for the collapse, for the blown lead, and for a young Bills corner who decided to poke the bear that is DeAndre Hopkins, something that might come back to haunt him if fate brings these two teams together again. Let's dive into where things really started to unravel for the Ravens. Because as good as the offense looked for most of the game, the final stretch was a disaster. And not just a tough break kind of disaster. We're talking about a collapse that has people questioning leadership, identity, and whether this team is truly built for the big moments. And right in the middle of that storm, John Harbaugh, a coach who's been praised for his longevity, his culture, his leadership, but also someone who's now under more pressure than ever. During his Monday press conference, Harbaugh gave some answers that honestly felt like they missed the mark. Nobody expected him to come out smiling and pretending like everything was fine. That would have made things even worse. But what people did expect was a little more ownership. Some clarity. A signal that he truly understands why this keeps happening. Instead, we got something that felt defensive, deflective, and honestly a little detached from reality. When asked about the fourth quarter collapse and how it ties into the team's recent history of blowing leads, Harbaugh gave this long, winding answer. He talked about how there's always a scenario in every game, about how they've come back from 2-score deficits themselves, and about how being in the lead a lot naturally opens up more chances to lose those leads. But here's the thing. Nobody's upset that the Ravens are regularly in the lead. People are upset because they keep blowing it. It's not the volume of leads. It's the inability to finish. He said they've only lost 6 of them in the past few years. But that's not a small number. That's not something to gloss over, especially when those blown leads tend to come in the biggest moments. Late in games, against playoff-caliber teams. And it's not just about numbers, it's about the feeling, the déjà vu, the sense that no matter how well the Ravens start, the ending might still go sideways. That's what fans are reacting to. That's why social media is in flames. Because the excuses, even if they're technically true, just don't sit right anymore. When the same issue pops up again and again, and the response sounds like, well, we've been ahead a lot, so some are bound to go wrong, it just doesn't land. It doesn't show accountability. It doesn't show urgency. It feels like brushing dirt under the rug when the entire living room is on fire. And that's where the vibe just felt off. You could sense it in Harbaugh's tone. There was this tension, this weird energy. Almost like he was trying to keep it together while knowing the pressure is starting to build around him. Because let's be honest, this year is different. This is not a rebuilding team. This is not a wait-and-see roster. This is a Super Bowl or bust season, and everyone knows it. The front office, the players, the fans, and yes, John Harbaugh. There are no more scapegoats. No more Greg Roman to point at. No rookie coordinator excuse. This is his team. This is his culture. This is his blueprint. And if it fails again, there's nowhere else for the blame to go. You can hear that pressure in some of the decisions he's trying to justify. Take the 4th and 3 situation, for example. With the game on the line, the Ravens chose to punt. A lot of fans, analysts, even former players have questioned that call. It felt like the kind of moment where you go win the game. Be aggressive. Trust your offense. Instead, the Ravens played it safe. And it backfired. Harbaugh defended the decision, saying the win probability of going for it might have been as low as 1 or 2%. That they had to make the call quickly or risk a delay of game penalty. That maybe they didn't have a play call they liked. All of that might be technically true. But again, it's not the kind of explanation that fires people up. It sounds cautious. It sounds reactive. And in that moment, people wanted to see a team playing to win, not playing not to lose. And then there's the other wrinkle. The fact that Lamar was cramping up. He admitted afterward that if he hadn't been feeling it physically, he would have been begging to stay on the field and go for it. That adds another layer of frustration, because not only did the Ravens play it safe, but they might have been forced to by circumstance. It's hard to blame Harbaugh for Lamar's body, but when it all stacks up, when you look at the sequence of events, it still ends up feeling like the Ravens backed off when the moment demanded boldness. It also didn't help that on the third down play right before the punt, Lamar took one of the hardest hits of his career. Ed Oliver came flying in and absolutely leveled him. No flag. Nothing. And yet, if you watch the clip, it sure looks like a borderline roughing the passer. One of those bang-bang plays that somehow always seems to go in favor of the other team. You can see it in Lamar's body language. He was clearly shaken by the hit. That might have played into the cramps, the punt decision, the whole downward spiral in those final minutes. And then Harbaugh's answers about other personnel decisions just added fuel to the fire. He was asked about why Keaton Mitchell didn't play, and his response boiled down to numbers. That there just weren't enough snaps to go around. That the offense had other priorities. That Mitchell's usage would be pretty limited. That's tough to hear when your defense is getting gashed, when you're desperate for spark plays, and when the coaching staff spent the offseason hyping up Mitchell's speed and explosiveness. It sends the message that maybe the plan isn't as clear as they made it seem. That maybe the coaching staff still doesn't fully know how to deploy its talent in the right moments. Harbaugh was also asked about that bizarre lateral by Kyle Hamilton after the failed two-point conversion, when Hamilton caught the ball in the end zone and randomly pitched it to Kyle Van Noy. If that goes wrong, it's a 1-point safety for Buffalo. A disaster. And Harbaugh's response? A half-joking, half-serious. I questioned whether he actually graduated from Notre Dame. Like, come on. That kind of moment deserves more than a joke. It's a breakdown in decision-making. A risk with zero upside. That's not just on the player. That's on coaching. And maybe that's the common thread here. Coaching. Because as much as individual players had their ups and downs in this game, the biggest moments, the ones that decided the outcome, all came down to how the team was managed. Whether it was clock control, defensive calls, substitutions, or mindset, the Ravens just looked like a team that wasn't ready to close. And that's on the staff. Now, to be fair, Harbaugh isn't the only one catching heat. Defensive coordinator Zach Orr is taking his share, and rightfully so. The defense gave up 22 points in the fourth quarter. Let that sink in. The Bills had 5 drives in that final quarter, and 4 of them ended in points. 3 touchdowns and a field goal. On the flip side, the Ravens had a touchdown, 2 punts, and a fumble. That's the story of the game right there. And the defense didn't just lose, it got walked down. There was no resistance. No pressure on Josh Allen. No identity. At least with Wink Martindale, the Ravens lived and died by the blitz. You knew what they were about. But in this game, it felt like a defense caught between philosophies. Passive when they needed to be aggressive. Soft zones when they needed to close the door. Josh Allen had 251 passing yards in the fourth quarter alone. That's the second most in a fourth quarter of a win in NFL history. The Ravens made him look like he was playing on air. No pressure. No disruption. Just clean pockets and wide-open receivers. And again, that falls on preparation, on scheme, on adjustments, or lack thereof. So when Harbaugh stands up there and says maybe it was miscommunication, maybe it was confusion between calls, maybe they didn't make things clear in the meeting room, that's not comforting. That's alarming. Because it's the same stuff we've heard for years. Different coordinators. Same problems. At some point, you stop looking at the assistants and start asking hard questions about the guy at the top. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. Baltimore may be on the verge of one of the most shocking moves in recent NFL memory. Whispers echoing through league circles suggest that the Ravens could be finalizing what would be the biggest signing in franchise history, star wide receiver Davante Adams. Though nothing has been officially confirmed, the buzz is deafening, and the idea alone has electrified fans across Maryland. Adams, long considered one of the premier wideouts in the league, has been the centerpiece of highlight reels for years, dazzling with crisp routes, sure hands, and the kind of playmaking ability that tilts defensive schemes before the ball is even snapped. Bringing him to Baltimore would instantly change the narrative around the Ravens' offense. For years, observers have argued that despite Lamar Jackson's brilliance, the team has lacked a truly dominant receiver. If the rumor proves true, that drought might be ending in spectacular fashion. The implications are enormous. Picture Adams lining up alongside young weapons like Zay Flowers, with Mark Andrews commanding attention over the middle. Suddenly, Baltimore's passing game could no longer be dismissed as Jackson-dependent. It would become one of the most feared aerial attacks in the league. Defenses already struggle to contain Jackson's dual-threat explosiveness. Add Adams to the mix, and opposing coordinators could be staring down sleepless nights. What fuels the rumor mill further is the talk around Adams' reported frustration in his current situation. Some close to the star suggest he's eager for a fresh start, ideally with a contender. Baltimore, coming off another playoff run and with a championship window wide open, fits the description perfectly. Fans have already taken to social media, posting mock-ups of Adams in purple and black, imagining M&T Bank Stadium erupting after one of his trademark toe-tap touchdowns. Of course, until ink meets paper, it's still speculation. But if this deal materializes, it would not just be another signing. It would be a thunderclap across the NFL. The Ravens, often known for defense-first identity, would suddenly boast one of the league's most electrifying offensive arsenals. For now, Baltimore waits, holding its breath, daring to believe the whispers might actually come true. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.